Welcome to the podcast from the St. Louis Sportists, an occasionally smart, always irreverent look at sports in St. Louis and beyond. And now, your St. Louis Sportists.
And welcome to another episode of the St. Louis Sportists podcast. My name is Ron Cook, and I am joined by Joe Sperlin.
Hey, glad to be here.
Doug Lansdowne.
Good evening. Hope everybody's doing good.
And back from his extensive homework on country and western Hall of Famers, Keith Farrell.
Yeah, I heard a rumor about that, but it's glad to be back.
We didn't get your official written statement on Brooks and Dunn, but I trust that you've listened to the entire Porter Wagner catalog by now.
Of course.
There you go. In this episode, the Blues drop 2 in Canada, but they're coming home. The Cardinals go 0 for New York, and Atlanta is not going so well either. The Tennessee saga turns out to be a trade. It's time to boo Roger Goodell again. I mean, it's time for the NFL draft. And City doesn't score again. The St. Louis Sportists are brought to you by First Coast Steel Buildings. I can actually hear lawnmowers right now behind me. And if you have mowers, lawn tools, or other things you want to protect, you need to get in touch with Jason and First Coast. You can catch them at 912-314-4848 or 1stcoaststeel.com. Again, that's the number 1stcoaststeel.com. And we'll hear more from them later in the show. We are coming to you tonight from the Local House Bistro studios. They are our studio sponsors, and last night we caught up the Blues game at the Bistro. Great group up there. Keith, even a local sportscasting legend was up there last night. I don't think I have to tell you. I think you probably could guess.
Mr. Future guest appearer, I hope, right?
It was indeed, yes. You'll be hearing from him in a future episode. And Cheyenne and Cooper were up there. Just a good, fun group. And as we've talked about before, it's always a lot of fun watching Blues playoffs with a good group, which Sunday, a group of us will be there. Keith will be actually at the game, but a lot of us will be up there Sunday noon game, where we will enjoy steaks, pastas, fish, bar favorites, burgers, pizza, apps, all sorts of things. And the usual fun group will be there. Tim, Holly, Jackie, Whitney, Darian, Cheyenne, Cooper, and Jacinda. 16524 Manchester Road. Eat local, drink local, and love local, the Local House Bistro. And before I go into the quick hits, this is kind of a terrifying night because now not only can you hear the St. Louis Sportists, but we have launched the YouTube page. So going forward, you will be able to see the magic as it transpires. I'm wearing a shirt with buttons tonight. Good work.
I'm wearing a shirt.
That's, well, about damn time.
But I don't have pants on.
And there we go. Well, just for that, Joe Sperlin, how about a quick hit?
Oh, my gosh. Hey, you talk about a quick hit. It's just amazing. Almost 125,000 people filled Allegiant Stadium for WrestleMania 41. Pro wrestling. 125,000 people in 2 nights. I saw there was 1.1 billion, as billion, social views on the WWE of that event. Crazy.
Wow.
It's a lot of money.
And there's gambling. You can gamble on the outcomes?
Not on your, as I will say, not your reputable sports books, but I think the ones down in the Caribbean, you could wager on those matches.
Mm-hmm. These are the same ones that were taking bets on Who Shot JR probably back in the day, if they would have existed. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
My goodness. I remember when it was a big deal when, what was it? Now, Doug, you'd probably remember this exactly. It was Hulk Hogan versus Mr. Wonderful, and wasn't Muhammad Ali the referee or something?
He may have been.
It's like WrestleMania 1.
Yeah, well, as I say, and there's 41 of them. As they say, there's more. They keep getting bigger and bigger and more money.
Oh, my. Doug, what do you have for a quick hit?
Of course, NFL draft's Thursday, and it's always neat to hear the different stories, see the different things, figure out who's going to do what. And I've not watched a lot of NFL, and I started watching it quite a bit over the weekend and stuff. And I'll be damned, you still have to hear about Aaron Rodgers saying he got disrespected by the Jets, and he's still waiting to sign with the Steelers. And there's a lot of good dudes in pro football, and he's not one of them. And I'm tired of hearing about him. Go to your mud hut and stay.
Yeah. I really thought that good old Achilles might have gotten him a couple years ago, but no. Keith Farrell.
Well, I'm going to share a text message that we got from a friend of ours who's on the horse racing circuit. And this has something to do with a little bit of drinking games. So there's this rider, his name is Boyd Martin, apparently on a worldwide rider stage. He's a known name. And this is not horse racing per se. This is like a cross country event where horses jump and they do these, they jump through water, they jump over hurdles. But this guy is on a worldwide stage and he says, you've got Americans in singlets drinking Bud Light and whooping like they're supposed to at a sporting event. The French don't get drunk enough. The Americans are who you want to ride in front of. They're there to party. Now, you're a country with a drinking problem when some casual guy riding a horse is looking around, watching a bunch of Americans just get wasted. It's actually kind of cool. But either way, we had a great time last year when we went to this thing, and we'll go again. But kudos to the Americans for having a favorable mark on this rider.
Yes, the Kentucky 3-day event, which is it's a spectacle, I would say, Keith.
It's a fun spectacle.
Indeed. So mine comes from the world of baseball and the Miami Marlins. I almost said Florida Marlins, but the Florida Marlins have taken yet another step in. I'm not quite sure exactly how you'd put it, but they have announced that they want their catchers in the minor leagues to focus on hitting. And so to that end, they have taken away all responsibilities of calling pitches from their catchers in the minor leagues. Every pitch thrown in the minor leagues by Florida pitchers is now signaled in from the bench. So if you're a catcher, I don't know if they do pitch comm or if they use the old school, signals, but that's all they do. So they can focus on their hitting and they don't, sit down and game plan or anything like that, like Yadier Molina or those guys did when they were coming up. So yet another element of baseball strategy being stripped away by the Florida Marlins. Other teams have said, you guys are insane. And the Marlins are like, oh, you're talking smack now. We'll chuckle when you guys do the same thing in a few years. So we'll see where this ends up.
On a quick related baseball note, this stadium, Steinbrenner Stadium, where the Rays are playing, I don't know which Yankee it was, but he was there and before the game. They were going over stuff. And did you realize there's more lightning strikes in that location than any other place in the world? And so they have these
lightning.
Yeah, so they have these giant poles around the outside of the stadium. And somebody was like, well, how come there's no lights on those poles? And they are lightning deterrents. So the stadium is surrounded by these poles that look like they have lights on them. It said they're supposed to grab the lightning and deter it straight into the ground. So,
that's comforting.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, on that note, I wonder if Steinbrenner Stadium is at least selling out.
That's a good question.
Good question.
Because I know the one in Oakland is not. for every game. But again, they priced their tickets very aggressively because they're like, we have to make up the revenue because we have such a small capacity. And so they've priced it so high that now people aren't coming and they don't get any revenue. It's price elasticity for those of you that have had economics classes. But anyway, on to something much more exciting than economics, Keith, and that is the St. Louis Blues. Unfortunately, down 2-0 versus the President's Cup winning Winnipeg Jets. And they looked like it, but the Blues hung with them in games 1 and 2.
Oh, I love the way the Blues have played. And it just seems like there's been some bad bounces going Winnipeg's way in terms of goals. Home ice advantage is real. The home team gets the last call when it comes to seeing who's on the visitors' ice, and the home team gets to do their matchups. But the Blues hung in game 1, and it was just an unfortunate penalty by Zach Bolduc in the middle of the game. And that did not result in a goal for Winnipeg, but that penalty totally changed the tempo of the game, in my opinion. And so you don't have that penalty. I think the Blues win. And, Winnipeg's been very fortunate this series to have those lucky bounces because Binnington is playing out of his mind. The best player on the ice is Jordan Binnington. And I think that's going to resonate in 3 and 4. And if those bounces just don't go in the net, Blues are at least tied going into this series.
Yeah, we were just up at the Bistro last night. We were just talking about the puck luck was the term that we used. And we even brought up the time in St. Louis when they shot the puck in and Bennington went out to get it. And if you remember this, Keith, it hit a sideboard and actually went straight into the net when he was around behind the back of the goal.
Yeah, well, and the other thing, too, is there's a bunch of young kids on the ice. And, I think they were kind of pressing in the third period of that first game, and where they'd get one shot in the last 21 minutes of the game. That is not a game plan. That's a recipe to lose. And that's what they did, and they got to learn from it. And, I'm very curious to see how they come out and play in games 3 and 4. I think it's going to be tied going back to Winnipeg.
Doug, we were talking before we went on the air about the close encounter for Jordan Binnington with the collision there. That was an intense moment for Blues fans.
Well, like I said, I didn't think that Snuggerud and the puck and Binnington should all be in the net at the same time. So I didn't think that was a good start. It was for Winnipeg to have been out for the Blues.
Yeah, and Keith, we do have certain flashbacks to Grant Fuhr and to Binnington with Kadri and things like that. And it's like, oh no, not here we go again.
We have a magnet in that net, and it's it's gamesmanship. It's part of the sport, and I hate it, but it just doesn't seem like it happens to other teams' goalies. It just doesn't happen. It happens at the most crucial moments in the series, and it changes the complexions of the series. And I've been trolled a few times when Kadri did that against Binnington a couple of years ago. When I went on Colorado's Facebook pages and started yelling at Kadri, and I won't do that again. But I think there may have been but anyway, there's it just needs to stop. So it just needs to stop, and I hope the refs and the league puts their foot down with this stuff because it cannot be a coincidence. We know what they're trying to do. They're trying to get into Bennington's head, and from what you can see, he's actually playing better as a result of it.
So games 3 and 4, Thursday and Sunday in St. Louis. What do we think we'll see?
I think we're going to see two convincing wins out of the Blues.
I made the comment as we were watching the end of game 1, my wife said with 12 seconds left, she said, "Why are they fighting now?" And I said, That is called setting the tone for the rest of the series. So,
Indeed, it's going to be. Well, it's already been a very physical series.
I'm looking at next year. This is just kind of a warm up for next year. And I hate to be in that moment because I think anything we get out of this year is just a bonus because we weren't supposed to. We were a marginal team. Everyone knew that. But, everyone says you got to be playoff tested, and these kids are getting tested.
Speaking of getting tested, Andre Palante was just tested to deep left field by a member of the Atlanta Braves.
Yeah, he's got some whiplash going on these last two at bats.
Speaking of the St. Louis Cardinals, Doug, the last time we got together, they were a 500 team, and now as we get together, they're 9-14 after just basically getting thumped in New York and losing a maddening game last night in Atlanta. We've seen Marmol's quote everywhere. It was a good game last night until it wasn't.
To quote the great late Denny Green, the Cardinals are who we thought they were. So, they're going to get back around 500. They're going to drop 4 or 5 games below. They're going to get close. And, it's just, we had hopes, especially that first week to 10 days. And then, the volatility of the bullpen is different every year. And, this year's bullpen is not very good. And the starters have hung in there pretty good. And they're basically, like I said, who we thought they were going to be. I don't know. I'd like to see Luke and Baker play more. I mean, him and Burleson are the same player. I don't know why we have to have both of them. So
I guess one's left-handed and one's right. That's all
Yeah.
I can really come up with.
yeah, but like we talked about earlier today in our thread, at least they made the right move and sent Siani down. So which it was the right move.
Yeah, and because Sagasi comes up and is basically the best hitter on the team, and as late as this morning, there was still a chance that he would be sent back to Memphis to play every day because I guess, there's not room enough for a guy. Yes, there's not room enough for the guy who's been hitting the ball better than anyone else on the team.
Yeah, they're just like I said, we as diehard fans, we hold out. We always have big dreams and huge hopes, but they're like they are who we thought they were.
They can't get out of their own way.
No,
They got the best hitter on the team, who, by the way, I said was going to be the leading hitter, average-wise at the beginning of the season. Just going to throw that out there. What more does he have to prove down in Memphis? What does he have to do to stay? It makes no freaking sense to me. And that's the part about the Cardinals and Mo that drives me bat crap crazy. So
Thank you for keeping me from checking the button twice there.
Yeah.
Miles Michaelis is basically not even a 5-inning pitcher anymore.
No, but he just, like I said, biding time till that contract's over this year. And
Can't come soon enough.
Gorman keeps swinging at pitches that hit the ground at 50 feet. He's going to be on the DL soon because he's going to smoke his back. He looked as foolish as they could be Saturday. His first at bats were, oh my goodness.
Now, the problem, Joe, is he's not going to get enough at bats to reach Keith's prediction of 175 strikeouts. That's the only thing holding him back from reaching that 175 number, which I believe he would very easily get. And so, Joe, as our major league correspondent at large, what have you seen around the league of interest?
Well, as you guys know, the Cardinals are 1-10 on the road. Thank goodness everybody in the Central Division's playing about the same. So they're not getting, they're not already 10 games back if they were in another division. And the two teams we've joked about all summer is, I'll just call them the A's because I'm not sure what team we're wanting to call them. But, they're 10-12. They were kind of a team we made fun of. And then the Angels, which I'll just call them the Angels. I'm not sure where they're at either. They're 11-10. So the two teams we've kind of made fun of that, hey, just send them to send them to Sacramento / Las Vegas, Oakland / wherever they're at, and the Angels. Yeah,
Now playing in a stadium near you.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and the Cardinals have turned a 2-0 lead into. I need for the scoreboard to update here, but anyway, the road woes continue. Still 2-2. Okay. Yeah.
But at least, like I said, at least no one in the Central Division is like playing 700 baseball right now. So
No, and that's I don't know that anyone is going to. I did happen to see a little bit of that insane Cub game on Friday, uh, where they scored 11 runs in the 8th inning. And when I walked in, it was 7-1 Cubs, and then I saw the Diamondbacks hit a grand slam home run. The Diamondbacks took a 8-7 lead, and then the Cubs came back and won. It was Wrigley Field. I mean,
great, yeah,
what else can you say?
exactly.
So we have reached the halfway point on the St. Louis Sportists podcast. When we come back, it's time to go sort out this Rocky Top mess, hopefully for the final time, unless, of course, as someone suggested, they go to a bowl game against USC and both UCLA and both quarterbacks opt out, which would be fitting somehow. The NFL draft is approaching, and St. Louis City, Keith, my gosh, they can't score again. We'll be right back.
Are you in the market for a barn dominium, house, garage, man cave, carport, or hobby shop? Wondering how to get started or where to go? Whatever you are looking to design, look no further than First Coast Steel Buildings. Give Jason and his team a call at 912-314-4848. They will guide you through the process, designing your building to fit your specific needs and budget. Call them today at 912-314-4848 or get inspirational ideas and start designing your own by visiting them at firstcoaststeel.com. Again, that's the number 1, stcoaststeel.com. Their low-cost buildings are fully galvanized steel, providing you with worry-free, low-maintenance requirements. Integrity, quality, and a family-first approach. First Coast Steel Buildings. 912-314-4848 or firstcoaststeel.com. Discounts for military and first responders.
And we are back on the St. Louis Sportists podcast. By the way, we have never identified the individual doing the voiceover on Jason's spot. That is Sandra Templeoff. And thank you, Sandra, for helping us out on that spot. We appreciate you. And, there's different people on every week, but you get to hear from Sandra every week. And this week, joining me, Ron Cook, is Doug Lansdowne, Joe Sperlin, and Keith Farrell. And Joe Sperlin, the Tennessee saga around Nico last week that we discussed seemed to have come to a conclusion this week when UCLA announced, where I guess Tennessee announced that UCLA quarterback Joey Aguiar is transferring from UCLA to Tennessee.
The powers that be of the NCAA's got to just be sitting there saying this is the last thing we need to happen. But it was bound to happen. I mean, I don't know if there was, the cash transaction or they sent a couple of practice uniforms to be named later or whatever, but it was just a flat out trade. And then the brother from Arkansas transfers to UCLA. I hope there's a quarterback controversy. I hope his dad wants to know why his other kid's not playing too.
Because it sounds like Nico's father was, shall we say, instrumental in this whole mess.
So once again, who you believe of? It's the breakup, and then you start hearing the stories. Um, I I just like how they wanted to go. They didn't like Tennessee's offense that scored 35 points a game. That they want to go to UCLA's offense that was scoring 18 a game. Now they throw it a lot. Well, it's because they can't run in that new big 12-18 conference they're in up there in the north.
Mm-hmm. And the game I saw when they played LSU last year, they threw a lot because they were behind.
Exactly.
So, yeah, I'm not quite
I also
sure.
like the tax references that I saw that he was going to get in UCLA. That half the money was going to taxes, and he was supposedly getting something like 1.5, and he's really only going to make 800,000. Probably should have stayed in Tennessee and collected his $2 million. But this was, if you didn't see this one coming, of just a flat out trade. Yeah.
And the younger brother that left, Arkansas probably got the short end of the stick on this deal because he was going to be their number 2 quarterback. But did you realize he didn't play when he was a senior in high school? He was ruled ineligible by the athletic department in California. so he hasn't played in 2 years.
Hey, and they won't be at UCLA next year either. They're going to go somewhere else next year.
Yep.
I mean, it's almost getting to where it's like you can't keep track of your team. Whoever your favorite team is going to be a new roster. I mean, Baylor basketball has 0 players on their roster right now. They've either graduated, left, portal, 0. Now, they'll say, well, that tells you what's going on with the culture problem at Baylor. Well, all of a sudden they can't coach at Baylor, or they don't know what's going on, but they all run for more money. Now, maybe they weren't treated or they didn't get paid what they thought they deserved, but everybody's running for money.
Yeah, you just have to kind of wonder if the Nico incident is going to be a cautionary tale for some people. My guess is no, because I think people will all assume that they're different, special, and that wouldn't apply to them.
Yep.
All I can say is if you're not playing your senior year in high school because you're not passing grades, those college tutors must be really good to get these guys whipped into shape over summer for them to play at a Division I program. So kudos to the tutors in the college football libraries.
Mm-hmm. It's back to
you, college tutors.
Yeah. It's like a Bud Light commercial.
Yeah.
Real college tutors. Okay. And then, of course, in a couple years, we'll be talking about Nico's prospects as the NFL draft approach for him. But this year, Green Bay. And so, Joe Sperlin, this is kind of one of the more interesting drafts because you have a two-way prospect high up in the draft who I saw today, the quote was, if he can't play both ways, he will quit.
Wow, that's shocking. That I can't imagine where he got that attitude from.
Yeah.
Colorado. I don't know. He is. I think he was a better wide receiver than he was a D-back, but I mean that's kind of his way of getting that money and marketing himself and all that other stuff. The NFL draft is interesting on just all the talk and all that other stuff. And like you said, Roger Goodell has become the villain of all that. I mean, anytime he comes up and says, "Come on, Boomy, is that the best you can do?" You got to love it. I mean, hey, that's why he makes what, $50-60 million to take those boos
a year.
Yeah. So as they said, he's all those owners pay him to take the bullets for them. So I still say Shadur Sanders is going to be like Doug's buddy Aaron Rodgers, and he will be sitting very late in the green room till at least 20th. And the look on his face when probably Jackson Dart gets picked before him and he's still sitting there about 20, 25
That'll
picks.
be the highlight of the draft.
That'll be interesting.
So, and I saw that the Shador visit with the Steelers did not go well. They said it was reminiscent of when A.J. McCarron went in and started lecturing people a few years ago.
You know, somebody made a point the other day, and it was really good, that you get caught up with he's the best quarterback in this draft, but if he would have been in last year's draft, he would have been the 5th or 6th best quarterback. So don't get caught up in taking a guy who really isn't that good, just he's the best that's in that class. And that's what they say that Shador is. I'm the same way with Cam Ward. I don't think Cam Ward's that great, but he's by far the best one in this draft, I guess.
Doug, when I was thinking about this segment today, I flashed back to something you said a few weeks ago, that they were going to have to find some way to keep Andy Reid from drafting the fastest wide receiver. And I asked if he'd entered the Al Davis phase, that, if we'll just see him wearing jumpsuits from now on. And if we see glasses around his neck with a chain, we'll know that something has really happened there. But what do you see the Chiefs looking for?
Oh, I think they've got to go lineman, but I would like to see. I would like to see the draft. It'll never happen, of course, because the NFL owns the world. But it would be interesting to see if the draft was held like the second week in February instead of the third week in April. How much some of these guys would change, where they're taken at and stuff and everything. Because I saw a deal today. There's some dude from Marshall who they think's going to go in the top 10.
Yeah.
Now you're telling me if they'd had the draft the second week in February, or first week in February, this guy from Marshall would have got drafted. But anyway, I think the Chiefs have got to go lineman, offense, defense, either way. I think they got to go that way. So I kind of like, Cleveland. Cleveland. There's another one's not been able to get out of their own way. I think they ought to take Travis Hunter, and then trade back up into the first round and draft Shador.
Why not?
They might as well. They're trying to build a new stadium and stuff. I mean, talk about get some attention.
Hey, if we're going to go in, let's go all in.
Uh-huh.
So the story I remember, Doug, back to your talking about shortening that distance. Remember Vernon Golston, the guy that he was faster than any of the wide receivers. He could bench more than some of the linemen. He went from being like not a second or third round pick to, it's like, gee, how high in the first round is this guy going to go?
Yeah, and then they're terrible.
And then we saw what happened. Yeah.
Yep.
And then they forgot to say, "Oh, well, we found out he can't catch."
Yeah, but no, back to the Chiefs. I think they've got to go, like I said, lineman.
Yeah, and the other thing you'll say I know they'll never do this, but I always think of that old picture of Pete Rozelle standing there with the chalkboard that said Pittsburgh, Terry Bradshaw, Louisiana Tech. And I just think, because was it Vegas, Joe, that they brought him out on like boats or something?
Yeah.
Across the water at the Bellagio or something.
Yeah. I had people that told me they were at the draft in Kansas City, and they said if you thought it was long at home, being there, it was horrible to watch at Kansas City. Great atmosphere, but it just took forever.
I bet that's right. Yeah.
Got to get all those commercials in.
Yeah.
So, Keith, St. Louis City. The scoring drought continues.
Yeah. I think they need Manford to change the rules and how big the net should be. Good Lord.
That's the best idea. I like that.
Well, I'm going to blame a little bit on soccer rules for this one, too, because the ball did find the back of the net for St. Louis, and it was a pretty close offsides. And it was actually an offsides call that I didn't understand very well. But after it was explained, okay, I get it. But they got to stop putting barriers in front of these rule barriers in front of these refs and the VAR, the video action replay, whatever that thing is called, they just need to remove some of these rules and to allow more scoring. And I think half the soccer world probably didn't realize that was an offsides call. But either way, that's a whole nother thing. I'm not blaming the game on that. But, Coach Melberg, he put some offense on the field with Klaus, Hartle, and Teutschert. And that was a good starting lineup. They had some good chances. They moved the ball around, and they just can't find the back of the net. So you take out, I think they took out Marcel Hartle, and then they put in Betcher, and Betcher really started, pressing and making some plays. But, they're just still trying to find that right chemistry to work. I still think the body language of Klaus is just terrible. He pouts. And that just, you're on the field with this guy. He's begging for the ball, and then he pouts when he doesn't get the ball, and then he pouts after he misses the net on a shot. It's not healthy for that team. So I think they need to go quick. I think they need to have more energy players. I think they need to go back to the high press, and that seems to be generating some more chances. And further, let's give credit where credit is due. Ben Lute, the goaltender, he's been playing well. He's had a couple of shutouts, clean sheets, as they say in the soccer world. And so let's give a shout out to him. But Berkey coming back and is going to make a little bit of a difference. But the defense has played well.
Yeah, and again, this team this was the number 1 point team in the MLS overall, right, that we just shut out. Okay. Yeah. So if you want to just, if you want to parse it out, it's like, how did the game go? Well, we shut out the number 1 team in the league. Okay. That's pretty good. Yeah. We didn't score, but we shut out the number 1 team in the league.
Yeah. They not only shut them out, but they're the highest scoring team going into that game. Mm-hmm. So, and that's, granted, Vancouver did. They seemed, they were just a few chances away. Right. They really did move the ball, and they commanded a lot of offensive zone possession, and their passing was spot on. And I just can't believe they didn't score a goal. And watching the game on Apple, those announcers were like, "This game's not going to end in a 0-0 tie," and you just kind of felt them have control. But I found some good takeaways in that game, and I hope that they can, put it back together and just find that chemistry. And they should. They're good enough. These are pro soccer players. I think they'll be okay.
Yeah. Two quick things, and Keith, this blew me away. The Premier League in England last year, at the end of the season, held a vote to abolish the VAR, at which point I'm like, what? And it barely survived. So, to think of a league with that much money behind it and involved in it, doing abolishing video review is just kind of mind-blowing in this day and age. But it caused so much consternation, and because of the delays and because of the fact that a lot of people, and they did a survey, and a majority of the fans said they don't feel like they got the call right after going to VAR, which is something that you'll see here in the MLS from time to time.
Yeah, I 100% agree. That's a great point. I wonder if you took a fan survey, what that would turn into.
Yeah.
Now, have they had an instance where one of their players and the ball ended up into the net with the goalie as well? Is this a St. Louis issue? Is this a St. Louis issue? Okay.
That's such a great point, because Luke took a hell of a shot. Yeah,
it's true. Ladies and gentlemen, Doug Lansdowne's Sleuth. There's another ball flying into the seats.
Plante is going to go see a chiropractor for a kinked neck.
My gosh. And then the one other thing I was going to say, and then we'll close out on City, was we saw the dive of the year from a Vancouver player. This guy rolled around. I said to our group around us that he looked like a hot dog on a roller at a Quick Trip. He at one point he used his head to propel him into his next series of rolls.
He looked like the Australian breakdancer in the last Olympics.
Yes.
It was that bad.
Yeah.
boy.
Well, and I like the fact that after the game, City was just showing it on the replay board. I mean, you've reached some level of taunting your opponent when you're just showing that. But so finally, we come to the last call from the local house bistro. Joe Sperlin, what do you have?
I continue to go with the NCAA, the mess that they just continue There are players that have entered the portal for basketball that have completed their eligibility, but are waiting for 6 lawsuits that could enable a 5th year of eligibility for everyone. And I read an article today that the NCAA said if they can somehow tie eligibility into academics, that all players will get a 5th year of eligibility, no matter what. I know. And that's the mess they have. They're also proposing abolishing 153 rules out of the NCAA rule book so they can get prepared to make direct payments to the players with that $20 million when it all happens. So,
God.
if you're an attorney, get ready.
If you're an attorney, start a practice right now.
Yes. I may start mine. By the time this is all done, it may be Joe Sperlin, attorney at law. Hey, because they're going to need a lot of them, a lot of attorneys.
I think you could find one of those online things where you could get your law degree, in the next 4 months.
Yeah. Oh, it's going to be a mess. It's going to be a mess.
Unbelievable. I just got a flash that Jay Feely is running for Congress in Arizona. Okay, go figure. Doug, what do you have?
Talked a little bit about the draft earlier. I'm always interested. I do enjoy watching it. So, it is a good time, and it's interesting to see how they start. There'll be some trades and gambles taken. And, last year at this time, nobody was talking about Michael Penix going in the 7th or 8th spot. So there'll be some gambles and stuff like that. But I guarantee you somehow, some way, the Eagles will make all the right moves.
Oh, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. I wonder if Kelly Stauffer gets contacted this time of year. Just, someone writing a feature story saying, so how surprised were you?
Yeah.
The other one I saw was someone just had the day the Saints traded everyone for Ricky Williams, and it was just one side had Washington gets, Saints get, and Joe, I know you'll remember this. I will never forget the scene of the Saints draft room just leaving.
Yeah. Except Dick just sitting there smiling, smoking a cigar.
It was one of the great draft days ever. Keith, what do you have?
Well, playoff hockey is one of the best times of the year for me. And, obviously we watch the Blues and we cry when they lose and we cheer when they win. But, I'm keeping my eye on that Toronto series. And I'm just so intrigued with how Craig Berube is going to how far he's going to take that team. They needed a new identity. I think he frustrated a lot of players, and right now they're rolling. So I'm just going to see how far that roll is going to take him into the next round. So we'll see. It's going to be fun. But yeah, go Craig Berube.
I was walking around the lake with the foxhound Willie McGee, and I was thinking, could you ever imagine a universe where your St. Louis Blues take on Craig Berube and the Maple Leafs for the Cup? That would be crossing the beams from Ghostbusters. I mean, my gosh. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So my closing note is, and this is available to everyone. Back in the day, you couldn't listen to KMOX in the day, but now, thanks to the Odyssey app, you can. And believe it or not, and I've never seen this before, but Oliver Marmol has started to go on KMOX on Tuesdays at noon and talk to Bernie Miklasz and a couple of the other guys, Ackerman, and he will break down basically anything they ask him for like 30 minutes, and he will just walk through the strategic stuff. And like today, Bernie was like grilling him on that ninth inning when they didn't put Helsley in on Friday night, and instead, went with Fernandez, who took how many pitches to give up the gopher ball? One, yeah. But and he will walk through kind of the logic, and Bernie kind of got into it with, I wouldn't say, I mean, they were both very polite, they were very cordial, and Bernie said, I mean this with all respect, but you gave me Mike Matheny flashbacks, because I flashed back to Michael Wacha coming in the championship series in San Francisco when he hadn't pitched for 17 days. And, it's like, why didn't you bring in your closer? And he said, Matheny looked at me almost like he was offended, going, you don't bring your closer in there. And so, but Marmol very thoughtfully and carefully explained his way through. So I just think that's very unique to have a MLB manager that will, and I've got to say, he has a lot more patience than certainly I would, because after a certain point, I would say, well, Jim N. O'Fallon, how many major league wins do you have?
I was getting ready to say, now let's see if that goes into July and August and September.
Yeah.
Did he ever say, well, Mo told me to do it?
He's auditioning for his next job.
Yeah.
MLB Network.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's paving the way for what he's going to do next year.
Could be. That could be.
His agent set that up for him.
Yeah.
I think so.
You may need this.
One thing you can do, Ali, is talk. So here's where you go. So with that, we have come to the end of another St. Louis Sportists podcast, now available on YouTube. Just go to YouTube, search the St. Louis Sportists. It's available on our website, the St. Louis, STLSportists.com. We are on, oh dear, this takes a while now. We're on X. We're on Facebook. We're on Blue Sky. We're on YouTube. Keith, is there anything we're not? Well, we're only on the appropriate sites. We'll leave it at that. We're only where we should be. And so, Joe Sperlin, thank you as always, sir.
Oh, enjoyed it as always.
Doug Lansdowne.
Lots of fun. Good time every time.
And Keith Farrell.
Good to be back. We'll see you next week.
And we thank all of you for listening to the St. Louis Sportists podcast. We'll talk to you next week, and until then, take care.
And that wraps another episode of the St. Louis Sportists podcast. Please like and subscribe to stay up to date on all the latest episodes. You can find these guys on all major podcast platforms. And thanks for listening.